Okay, Mr. Mayor, I believe we are now on YouTube.
Good evening, councillors, officers and members of the public viewing on YouTube. Welcome to today's special full council. The first item of business is apologies for absence. Are there any apologies?
Mr. Mayor, I have apologies from Councillor Latter.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. The next item is declarations of interest. Does any councillor present wish to make any declarations of interest in respect to any item on the agenda?
I see no declarations, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the Corby Town Council report. Can I please see Paul Gold to present the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. Before I introduce the report, I'd like, we have a guest with us today, Leslie Sandbrook-Smith, who's from the Northamptonshire County Association of Local Councils, who's been providing me with some very helpful advice and helping me to try and keep on the straight and narrow when we've been trying to develop this project, and will continue to assist through to the formation of the actual council. What I'd like to do, Mr. Mayor, members would have had sight of the report, hopefully. What I'd like to do is focus on a couple of key areas and then obviously just open it up to questions. So if it's okay, I will share my screen at this point. He said, hopefully. Can everybody see the map on the screen? Okay, so the first area I'd like to focus on are the proposed electoral arrangements for the town council. As we discussed previously at OCPC, I've based these on the unitary ward boundaries, which themselves are based on the Northamptonshire County Council boundaries. There is one slight amendment I would draw your attention to from what we had previously discussed at OCPC, and this relates to the Corby Old Village area. Now, when we discussed it at OCPC previously, I had suggested that we might, because the Corby Old Village area, as you may know, is in the Corby Rural Ward for the unitary elections. And I had suggested that it could possibly be a single member ward. However, having had thought this through, both ourselves and one or two others have had problems in single member wards where the member has either resigned or retired or whatever. So we think to make it more robust, what we're proposing for the Lloyd's ward, which I appreciate looks like the size of Texas, but trust me, it's not. This Lloyd's ward would have 5 members, 5 town councillors, and the other 3 wards would have the 4 each, giving us the total of 17. In terms of electoral figures, this works quite well actually. All of the wards are in the range between 2,500 to 3,000 electors per town councillor, so it's reasonably tight. But that is the one alteration I would draw your attention to in relation to what was discussed at OCPC last year. As you'll see, this area here, this is Little Stanion down here. Hopefully my cursor is working on the screen. So this area here, which is titled Euro Hub, would be within Lloyd's ward, as would be all of this industrial estate, taking it up with the boundary with Weldon Parish. In the north, this industrial stroke commercial area here at the top would be in Lloyd's ward, and this quirky little bit, the other side of Rockingham Road, would fall within Corby West, but obviously, you know, that's just the way the boundaries work with Rockingham and so on, Nottingham and so on. So that is what we're proposing in terms of the electoral side of things. 17 members, 5 in Lloyd's, 4 in the other 3 wards. The other main area I would like to dwell on for a moment is the proposed budget, because obviously this is a particularly important area for Corby citizens and for the future town council. This has been developed with the assistance of Leslie and 1 or 2 other colleagues. Now, the aim, as was stated at OCPC, is about trying to ensure that the town council is set up and is sustainable. Obviously, it will be up to the town councillors and the officers that they employ in what direction the town council will take. And as has been discussed more than once, hopefully working in conjunction with other partners, the town council will over time develop, possibly take on more services, possibly take on assets. But you'll see that the cost of setting up a fairly, if I can call it, basic town council does still come to a reasonable sum of money. Now, this is the tax base which will be used to levy the local precept, 15,712. Now, excuse me while I just enter another councillor into the meeting. Thank you. So just running through the, if I can say, the big ticket items, staffing costs. This allows for a full-time town clerk and a part-time financial assistant. We obviously envisage getting the town clerk employed as soon as possible, because that is the pivotal post for any town council. We recognise the size of the town council, and more importantly, what we want the town council, or hope the town council will do in future years, which is to develop and grow. So this 94k figure here allows for the 1.5 full-time equivalent salaries, plus obviously the employment costs. Training is another important element. We are obviously assuming there will be, well, everybody will be new to being on a Corby Town Council. And so we want to make sure that there's a reasonable training budget, certainly in year 1, for members who are elected to be able to receive appropriate training. Because obviously, although town council and a borough council are both local government, they are different beasts, if I can put it that way. And there are things that members, particularly if they're new members who have never been a councillor of any sort before, will need to know. Insurance, obviously, we need to ensure that all the appropriate insurances are in place. Professional services, you'll see that's a large figure, 42k. However, that does include the recharge we will receive from the invoice we will receive from the Unitary Council for the costs of holding the elections on the 6th of May. Now, obviously, that's a once every 4-year cost. However, as Adrian was good enough to remind me, they do need to ensure that they have a provision every 4 years for that election recharge. So it may be that they want to put a bit of money aside each year going forward, so that they've got the money in the pot for when the elections come around in 4 years' time. But there is an allowance in here for the recharge that we will receive, the invoice that we will receive from the Unitary Council for the elections. The office consumables and all the bits and pieces that go with it are here under 11k. Accommodation. What you will have seen in the report is a proposal that we agree for the town council, at least for the next 5 years, to use office accommodation in the Cube at a peppercorn rent. However, there will be other costs on top of that, such as service charges, utilities, etc. And so there's still a need for a sum of money to be put aside against accommodation. PR and marketing, that includes obviously communications with the Corby citizens. Member costs, We have taken a very no frills approach to the member costs. So the 2K that you see for the chairman, that would be, if you like, a budget that could be used by the chairman when attending or events on behalf of the town council. It's not an allowance directly to the chairman. It would be a budget to be used for the activities of the chairman. Plus, we set aside 2K for general member travel expenses. Although it's not appropriate, obviously, at the moment, we're planning for the next 12 months. So hopefully there may be some return to normality as the months go by. And if you have members who are attending meetings and so on around the county or wider afield on behalf of the town council, then there needs to be a travel and subsistence budget put aside to cover their out-of-pocket expenses. But there are no allowances being proposed as such for any of the members on the town council. Civic events, we put 10K there because there may be activities that the town council wishes to conduct during the course of the year. So when it says civic events, it doesn't necessarily refer to things like civic dinners and civic balls and all that sort of thing. It means things that the council, the town council would want to finance as part of their activities within the wider community. You'll see we've made an allowance for 10K for grants. These are grants to local community and voluntary organisations that the town council may wish to make. This is in addition to the grant monies that are being transferred from the Borough Council into the new unitary. As far as I'm aware, the budgets are transferring across. So this is additional monies in relation to that the town council may wish to allocate during the course of the year. The 25K is contingency stroke projects. There may be the opportunity during the course of the year for the town council to apply for grants for various things. There may be match funding involved. So this is money that's set aside that the town council may be able to use for that. But in addition, if there are any potential overspends on any of these up here, then there is a sum of money set aside to cover that. Allotments. It will be necessary during the course of 2021 for the allotments within Corby town to be transferred to the town council. And there is a process that needs to be gone through. Currently, based on existing budgets, we're putting aside 2K for the transfer of the allotments. They do bring in a very, very small amount of income, but it isn't currently a big ticket item. But we've just made sure to make sure that it's sustainable, that we've got a budget allocation in there for the next financial year. And finally, the figure down here, 60K, that would be contribution to reserves. We have to remember that when the town council starts on the 1st of April, it will have no reserves unless we allocate some reserves to it in case of unexpected events during the course of the year. Now, talking to Leslie, for a budget of this size, it is normal to about have a quarter of that set aside for reserves. Now, obviously, I'm not proposing to go up to that figure, which is somewhere around 73 plus, which is recommended. So it is below the recommended level of reserves. But obviously, in year 2, the town council can look to bump that up. But there is a need to ensure if this figure here increases, then the recommended level of reserves would need to increase as well, particularly if the town council starts to take on assets and services in the future. This figure needs to be kept under scrutiny and possibly rise. But quite potentially next in year 2, not next financial year, but the year after, the amount that they need to allocate to reserves should be lower than that 60k figure, as that 60k figure will carry forward. I hope that makes sense, and I'll stop sharing at this point. In relation to other elements of the report, on page 1 and page 2 of the report, you'll see a number of principles that were agreed by OCPC. Hopefully, I've updated members in my presentation and in the report to most of those. There are 1 or 2 elements that are still work in progress and will be right up to vesting day on the 1st of April. With the proviso that, Leslie, I may call you in if there are any questions that I'm struggling with. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to take any questions from the floor.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions relating to the report? Yep, Councillor Isles was that, and then I think I saw Councillor Watt.
Thank you. Now, between April the 1st and May the 6th, or whenever the unitary elections are, people can be appointed from current councillors, I take it, or is it open to a whole of Corby by the Chief Executive, reading explanatory note on here? And what would the role be during this interim period? Because surely the newly elected council would vote for their own constitution, not the interim councillors.
To answer that question, it's really a bit cautious.
Or your microphone has gone crackly.
Yeah. Still there. Have a drink of water.
You sound like a grizzly bear.
Just give me one moment. Let me try another device.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just while Paul is trying to log in, just to pick up on Councillor Isles' question. I'm sure if I'm incorrect, Paul will correct me when he's able to log back in. But in terms of the interim arrangement for members being co-opted into the town council, it will just be purely to, as an interim basis. It won't be to actually decide what the constitution will be for the new town council. That'll be for the incoming members after the elections in May.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Iles, or would you like to wait for Paul?
I'll come back if I can. You know, there is talk perhaps elections being postponed till later in the year. That seems to be a long while for an interim council without doing anything.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just come back in on that. I appreciate the issue, and it's a bit of an unknown at the moment. The guidance we've received, there's an intention for elections to still take place in May. That may change, and I think we just have to bear with the situation in terms of the best as we can do. But I do appreciate the point that it could allow the council to be in abeyance for some time before it actually is able to get up and running. However, that situation is slightly out of our hands in terms of if that eventuality does happen.
Thank you. Not sure if Paul's having any luck. Oh, got a thumbs up.
And Councillor McGee has his hand up. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, mine says probably more for Adrian than Paul. For my sins as a lead member for Culture and Leisure, I thought I would have should have known this, but I was asked a question about the Corby lottery, and given that that probably wipes its feet because the money comes from the actual money made to manage it. I'm surprised I never saw it in there. So perhaps, you know, somebody can clarify whether that's able to happen or not straight off. And secondly, Jonathan, can I very quickly ask, how will you select the 17 councillors in April?
Thank you. I can't see Adrian. His window seems to have gone. So, Jonathan, do you want to answer and see? Hopefully, Adrian will come back.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor. We seem to be having some technical issues. I actually didn't catch Councillor McGee's first question. My screen seemed to freeze at that point, and I heard about how the 17 councillors would be appointed. So I really would you mind just repeating the first question because it all froze.
Councillor McGee.
Sorry, can you hear me, Jonathan?
I can hear you, Paul.
Do you want me to come back in?
I'm happy to come back in a minute.
Question.
Okay. The question was, Jonathan, it was 2 point, and perhaps Paul could help too, but Adrian seems to have gone. I was asked a question about the Corby lottery, and given that it wipes its feet through what it actually brings in, I'm surprised that that wasn't forwarded, or at least suggested it may go straight to the town council. And I, you know, as lead member, should have probably raised that beforehand. The second part was for Jonathan of how will the 17 members be selected in April?
Thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for repeating the questions about Councillor McGee. In terms of the transfer of the Corby lottery, yeah, it's not something that has come up previously, but it's clearly something that could happen quite quickly in terms of the new council once the members are elected in May, that they'll be able to make a decision in terms of whether that's something they would want to run, given it is a local based scheme for local organisations and charities to benefit from. So that's certainly something we can look at doing in the future. I will defer to Paul in terms of the second question in terms of the appointment of the members.
Over to you, Paul.
Thank you. Yes, just following up on the Corby lottery question. Obviously, until the town council is actually formed, we can't actually apply for a licence from anywhere for the lottery to be run. So it is a case of having to do one first and then well, obviously approach the Unitary Council and ask for the lottery to be transferred over to the Town Council. So that's totally feasible, but it's not something we could do in advance of the Town Council being formed. In relation to the selection of officers, and I apologise for the technical mishap, so if I'm repeating anything that Jonathan may have said. In terms of the transition period, obviously the elections for the Town Council are scheduled to be combined with the other elections on the 6th of May. So the possibility that there is a need for the Town Council to actually meet between the 1st of April and after May, the beginning of May is remote. And as Councillor Owl said, I think had the answer, the Town Council will need to adopt the Constitution and all the other policies and procedures that need to be adopted at their first meeting. Now, if, and it is a big if, the elections are postponed for a significant amount of time, then there will be a need for the Unitary Council, because it will be the Unitary Council, obviously, after the 1st of April, to consider appointing a number of councillors in order to start some of the decision-making process for the new Town Council. Whether it's the full 17 or not, as long as there's enough councillors for them to make lawful decisions, that would be the situation. So in fact, the choosing, if you like, of the Town Councils would be in the gift of the Unitary Council at that time, if it was necessary to convene the Town Council before the elections are held, if the elections are postponed. Does that answer your question, Councillor McGee? No, it doesn't. How would it...
Mr. Mayor, if I may, is that okay, Mr. Mayor? I'll come back there. It does answer it mostly, but if we are going forward to employ a secretary, which has the key job to speak for the Town Council, and there's no elected members, how does that work? I just want to get a better understanding. I do take the point that there probably isn't a strong need to have councillors meet before the election. But if somebody is employed, who is, at that time or before that time, who will be looking after that person?
Well, I mean, obviously the Town Council will need to have a payroll established. So as I think I said earlier on, there are a number of administrative issues that need to be resolved between now and the 1st of April that haven't been covered off in this report. So the intention will be hopefully to bring, well, not hopefully, the intention will be to bring a report to OCPC in March to hopefully just, if you like, tick a few more boxes along the way. But Leslie, I don't know if you want to give some insight to the councillors about the way it's been approached in other places.
Yes, thank you, Paul. Good evening, councillors. So you're in a position, as is Kettering Borough Council when they form Kettering Town Council. So your council will be formed on the 1st of April, and you need to have a proper officer for that council. So we've recommended that you begin the recruitment process for the town clerk. So you have the proper officer in place ready to service the first meeting of the new town council. That proper officer will be able to receive documents on behalf of the council, will be able to accept all of the councillors' declarations of office, and will be able to make sure that you have everything in place for that first town council meeting. We will have to organise some form of payroll, because obviously that clerk will be employed as a town clerk. However, you need a payroll process. So that's something that Paul and I will be working on in the interim. You also need bank accounts opened, but you don't have councillors yet. That's another thing that is work in progress, and we'll be working towards a solution for that for vesting day. Other councils in the area were actually created on the 1st of April 2020. So they've operated in shadow form, and they've started to have their first meetings, and they've started to have their permanent clerks appointed, etc. So there are sort of two different processes going on currently in the county, some shadow councils for the town and parish councils which have been created this year, and then like yourselves in Kettering, town councils created in this, well, in next sort of council year on the 1st of April.
If it's of any help, Councillor, through Mr. Mayor, if it's of any help, Councillor McGee, what we can do is bring an update report to OCPC in February, which is only a couple of weeks away, which bottoms off some of these issues, and hopefully between then and now and then, Leslie and I can do a bit more work on that process and have something to put in front of councillors for them to scrutinise. Is that okay? Okay.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Councillor Kevin Watt, I think, was next, and then it was Councillor McEwen. Kevin?
Thank you. I'm fully in favour of the town council, and I hope it's an active, ambitious town council challenging the unitary to deliver. There's one thing that sort of stands out in the budget, and that is really the cost of the clerk and the secretary. Are these really? Is it really a full-time role? They're taking up, 1/3 of the budget. It's going to be a difficult sell to the electorate, the justification of that. If it was a larger budget that we had and a more active, appeared a more active budget, then I think that's easier to sell. But the fact that 1/3 is just taken up with administration seems sort of counterintuitive. I appreciate it's small and it's starting, but it's just are these really full-time positions?
Well, I'll through Mr. Mayor, I'll ask Leslie to come in about the scales and the gradings, if I can put it that way. But just to make the point that we're probably not, if you want the town council to actually develop and to grow and to be in a position where it's sustainable and in a position where it can take on assets and services down the road. I'm not talking necessarily in just a couple of months, but obviously further ahead, and have those discussions with the Unitary Council, which we've talked of at OCPC previously. Then you really need to have somebody in place who is experienced and has the necessary qualifications to take that forward, because they are, in effect, we use the term proper officer and town clerk, they are effectively the chief executive. Yes, I can understand the point you're making. Oh, can we employ someone? This is not going to be it's not intended. This will be a parish council which provides very few services. It's intended to be the base for a council that will be able to take on services and assets if necessary going forward. And for that, you really need to have somebody at the helm on the officer side, working with the members, developing the plans and the programs. And that's why we're saying that the full-time post is very important. The other post is part-time, and that would hopefully be someone with a finance slant to act as the responsible financial officer and deal with the bookkeeping and that side of things. But I'll let Leslie come in relation to the scales and the gradings of the posts.
Thank you, Paul. So for the town clerk, the scales that we've been looking at is something called spinal column point 33 to 36. And that would give a base salary of 36,922 up to 39,880. To put that in perspective, Wellingborough Town Council is just about to go out to advert for their clerk, and they are at a higher scale. So you're by no means pushing the boundaries with any salaries for the clerk. As Paul said, you need someone who is going to be able to negotiate with the Unitary Council. You need someone who's going to be able to work very well with elected members and also be outward facing to the public. The clerk is going to have quite a task on their hands. They will be hopefully achieving great things for the council. They will be looking to get more assets and potentially services if that's what the councillors so desire. So you need someone who's very organised, who is well trained, understands public finance, as well as working with the finance officer, so they have a good overall understanding of the finance. So whilst it does seem a lot in that particular budget, you need somebody who's going to be really steady and firm and give good advice in year one and moving forward with the council. You don't want to set the council up to fail because you've employed a person who maybe doesn't understand and doesn't have the necessary background.
Mr. Mayor, can I just ask
Yeah.
Leslie to add to that? Can you just very briefly, Leslie, explain about the professional qualifications that we'll be looking for in terms of someone to fill the town clerk role?
Yes. So we would like someone to have something called a CILCA, which is Certificate in Local Government Administration. So they will be fully trained in all of the legal practices that you would need to administer a town or a parish council. We offer many training courses. It's not a case of just having one qualification. You want quite a rounded person. So ideally you want someone with some experience of working in local government, working in town and parish councils, if at all possible. The certificate takes around 6 to 8 months to achieve. It develops a clerk's knowledge quite deeply. You have to provide a lot of information, you have to provide a lot of evidence. So it's a good solid foundation for any clerk.
And my final point, Mr. Mayor, on Councillor Watt's question, is that we have to remember that this person, I mean, we're talking about one person with another half person, as it were, coming online. They are really the officer support for the whole council. There isn't an HR to go to, or a finance department to go to, or legal services to go to. That they are the officer support for the council. So yes, I appreciate that it may seem a large percentage, but then again, if you look at our own council, staffing is a large percentage of our budget as well. It's just the way that it works out, and obviously as the council develops, you know, there's even the potential there may be a need for additional staffing, but that depends on how the council develops going forward over the next few years.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Watt, would you like to come back?
Yeah, just say thank you very much for that explanation, and now I understand why you know, this position is the staffing costs are what they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Watt. Councillor McEwen?
Is it right that the town clerk has got to be in position before vesting day? And if so, who will be holding the interviews to employ the new town clerk? Will it be councillors just now, or will it be officers?
Well, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's going to be party to the report I was talking about just now. That'll come to OCPC. So, I mean, at the moment, I know in Wellingborough, one of my colleagues is currently the unpaid clerk for the Wellingborough Town Council, and I believe my colleagues in Kettering are making similar temporary arrangements. So the town council will not be left high and dry, I can assure you of that, but we'll expand on that as we discuss it at OCPC in a few weeks' time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Is there any further comments or questions? I can't see any. Have you got any, Paul, on yours?
No, I can't see anybody wishing to raise anything, Mr. Mayor.
No. Okay, so could I see somebody to move the recommendation? Oh, Councillor Addison. Second. Oh, Isles. Okay, all those in favour? Against?
That was unanimous, I believe, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Okay. Suspend. Okay, thank you. The next item is the Stanion Parish Council report. Please may I see Paul Galt again to present it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, talking about appointing members to things, members may recall that a couple of years ago we had a request from Stanion Parish Council, who unfortunately ran into a few difficulties, and they asked us to appoint some temporary representatives so that they could operate and hold lawful meetings and duly co-opt members of their community onto the council. A similar situation has occurred down in Stanion. They currently only have 2 parish councillors, and so they're looking for assistance again from us to be able to hold parish council meetings and progress matters down there in a lawful way. Since circulating the report, I have received nominations from Councillor Beebe and Councillor Colquhoun, not directly. I apologise if it comes as a surprise to them. But I've had the nominations of Councillor Beebe and Councillor Colquhoun come forward. And we're also proposing on this occasion to invite Leslie's colleague, Danny Moody, to also be appointed as a parish councillor. Danny has already been doing some work with the 2 remaining parish councillors at Stanion. It should be noted that Stanion also currently is without a clerk. So there's quite a bit of work to be done down there, and Danny will bring an enormous amount of expertise and knowledge to the party if he was appointed. So the proposal, Mr. Mayor, is for Councillors Beebe, Councillor Beebe, Councillor Colquhoun and Mr. Danny Moody to be appointed by the Borough Council to fill those positions on Stanion Parish Council until such time as the Parish Council is able to stand on its own feet. I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, before we move the recommendation, does anyone have any questions or comments? Got nothing. Okay, so please can I see somebody to move the recommendation? Oh, sorry, no, back up. Councillor Addison.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was moving the recommendation.
Oh, you're moving it, you're too quick, sorry. Yeah, okay, so Councillor Addison to move it. Can I see a seconder, please? I saw Councillor Riley. Sorry if anyone else was quicker. All those in favour of the recommendation? All those against? I think it's
That's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, councillors and officers. That concludes the business on the agenda. The next full council meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 9th of February at 7 p.m. I now declare the meeting.
Mr. Mayor, apologies.
Yes.
Apologies for that. Given the lack of business on the 9th of February, it's being proposed that that actually be cancelled. So the next meeting will be the March meeting, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that.
Apologies for that.
That's all right. On that note, I now declare the meeting closed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors and officers.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks everyone.